The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, casting dappled light across the trail where Emily Harper jogged. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, and the distant rush of a creek mingled with the rhythmic crunch of her running shoes against the gravel path. At 28, Emily was a creature of habit. Her morning runs a ritual she'd honed since moving to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. 2 years ago, she'd traded the bustle of Nashville for the quiet of the Smokies, drawn to the endless trails that wound through ancient forests and mist-shrouded peaks. Her auburn hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, bouncing with each stride, and her green eyes scanned the familiar path with a mix of focus and reverence. This was her sanctuary, where the world's noise fell away, leaving only her breath, her heartbeat, and the wild. Emily wasn't alone in her love for the park. Her partner, Lucas Reed, often joined her for evening hikes, their laughter echoing across ridgelines as they planned their future. A small cabin, a dog, maybe a family someday. Lucas, a lanky carpenter with a quick smile, had grown up in these mountains, and his stories of childhood adventures had deepened Emily's connection to the land. She carried a photo of them in her running pack, a candid shot from last summer. Emily grinning, her freckled cheeks flushed from a climb, Lucas pressing a kiss to her temple as the sun set behind Klingman's dome. That photo, tucked beside her water bottle and granola bar, was a talisman of sorts, a reminder of why she ran these trails. On this July morning in 2022, Emily had set out at dawn, as she often did during the summer. The Alum Cave Trail was her favorite, a 5-mile out and back with steep inclines and sweeping views. She texted Lucas at 5:45 a.m., heading out. Back by 9. Love you. He'd replied with a heart emoji, still half asleep. She parked her blue Subaru at the trailhead, a gravel lot nestled off Newfound Gap Road, and slipped on her hydration vest. The lot was empty, save for a lone pickup truck parked crookedly at the far end, its faded red paint glinting in the early light. Emily barely noticed it, her mind already on the trail ahead. The Alum Cave Trail wound upward through dense rhododendron thickets, past trickling streams and moss-covered boulders. Emily's pace was steady, her breath syncing with the cadence of her steps. She passed a familiar landmark, a gnarled oak she'd nicknamed Old Man for its twisted branches, and smiled. The trail was quiet, save for the chatter of birds and the occasional rustle of a squirrel. At the 2-mile mark, she paused at Arch Rock, a natural stone tunnel carved by centuries of water, and sipped from her hydration tube. The cool air inside the rock formation brushed her skin, raising goosebumps. She checked her watch. 6:30 a.m. Right on schedule. By 9:30 a.m., Lucas was pacing their small apartment, his phone clutched in his hand. Emily's text had promised she'd be back by now, but her phone went straight to voicemail. He tried again, then again, each unanswered call tightening the knot in his chest. Emily was punctual to a fault. Her nursing job at the local hospital demanded it. She'd never been late without a call or text. Lucas grabbed his keys and drove to the trailhead, his heart hammering as he scanned the lot. There was Emily's Subaru, parked neatly where she'd left it, her spare key still tucked under the wheel well where they hid it for emergencies. The driver's door was unlocked, her running pack gone, but her wallet and phone charger sat untouched on the passenger seat. The red pickup truck was gone. Lucas called 911, his voice shaking as he explained. She's not here. Her car's here, but she's not. She was running the Alum Cave Trail. She's never late. The dispatcher's calm questions only heightened his panic. When did she leave? What was she wearing? Any medical conditions? Lucas described her outfit from memory. Black running shorts, a teal tank top, a lightweight gray hydration vest. No conditions, no enemies, just Emily, who loved these mountains more than anyone. By noon, the trailhead was a hive of activity. Park rangers arrived first, their radios crackling as they coordinated with the Gatlinburg Police Department. A search and rescue team assembled, volunteers in bright orange vests fanning out with topographic maps and walkie-talkies. Lucas stood by Emily's car, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, staring at the trailhead as if she might emerge at any moment. A ranger, a wiry woman named Karen Holt with a no-nonsense demeanor, approached him. "We're doing everything we can," she said, her voice steady but kind. "She's probably just lost her way. These trails can be tricky." Lucas nodded, but his eyes were fixed on the forest, its beauty now a cruel mockery. The Smokies stretched across 211,000 acres, with over 800 miles of trails, countless ravines, and dense undergrowth that could swallow a person whole. He thought of Emily's stories about patients who'd wandered off trails, disoriented by heat or injury, and clung to the hope that she was simply hurt, waiting for help. But the untouched car, the missing pack, the silence, it gnawed at him. The Rangers found the first clue by mid-afternoon, a single teal shoelace, frayed at one end, caught in a patch of briars about a mile up the trail. It matched the laces on Emily's running shoes, the ones Lucas had teased her about because she double-knotted them like a kid. Ranger Holt bagged it carefully, her face unreadable, but Lucas's knees buckled. "It's hers," he whispered. "She was here." The team pressed on, calling Emily's name, their voices echoing unanswered through the trees. As dusk fell, the search intensified. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their spotlights cutting through the gathering fog. K-9 units swept the trail, but the dogs lost the scent near Arch Rock, circling in confusion. Volunteers combed the area, their flashlights bobbing like fireflies. Lucas stayed at the trailhead, refusing to leave, his eyes red from exhaustion and fear. A local reporter arrived, snapping photos and asking questions Lucas barely heard. "She's out there," he told them, his voice cracking. "She's tough. She knows these trails." That night, the temperature dropped to the low 60s, a reminder of the Smokies' unpredictable summer weather. Emily wasn't dressed for a night in the wild, no jacket, no extra layers. Lucas sat in his truck, staring at her car, replaying their last conversation. She'd been excited about a new trail map she'd bought, eager to explore a lesser-known spur off Alum Cave. Had she veered off the main path? The thought made his stomach lurch. The spur trails were narrow, unmarked, and treacherous, leading to cliffs and dense thickets where even experienced hikers could vanish. By morning, the search had expanded. The National Park Service brought in additional teams from neighboring counties, and word spread through Gatlinburg. Locals arrived with water bottles and sandwiches for the volunteers, their faces grim. Emily's parents drove in from Knoxville, their eyes hollow as they hugged Lucas. Her mother, Diane, clutched a photo from Emily's running pack, the one of her and Lucas at Klingman's Dome, and sobbed. "She's out there," Diane said, echoing Lucas's mantra. "She has to be." Ranger Holt briefed the team at dawn, her map marked with red excess where they'd searched. The Alum Cave Trail was a labyrinth of switchbacks and spurs, and the surrounding forest was a tangle of laurel and fallen logs. "We're looking at a needle in a haystack," she admitted to her partner, a young ranger named Mike Delgado, when she thought no one was listening. But Lucas overheard, and the words hit like a punch. He grabbed Holt's arm, his voice low. "You're not giving up, are you?" Holt met his gaze, her jaw tight. "Not a chance. We don't stop until we find her." As the second day began, the searchers found another clue, a small, silver earring shaped like a leaf, half buried in the dirt near a streambed. Emily had worn those earrings every day, a gift from Lucas for their first anniversary. The discovery sparked a surge of hope, but it was fleeting. The streambed was a dead end, its banks too steep and slick to yield more tracks. The dogs circled again, whining, their handlers exchanging worried glances. Lucas stood at the trailhead, the earring in a plastic bag in his hand, its delicate shape a cruel reminder of Emily's absence. The forest loomed before him, its beauty now a vast, indifferent expanse that had swallowed the woman he loved. The search continued, but with every passing hour, the question grew louder, unspoken but heavy in the air. Where was Emily Harper? The Great Smoky Mountains National Park buzzed with urgency as the search for Emily Harper entered its second day. The Alum Cave Trailhead, once a quiet haven for hikers, was now a command center. Tents dotted the gravel lot, housing maps, radios, and exhausted volunteers. The air carried the sharp tang of coffee and the low hum of generators powering floodlights. Rangers in green uniforms moved with purpose, their boots crunching against the gravel, while helicopters thumped overhead, slicing through the morning mist. The forest, with its towering pines and tangled rhododendrons, loomed like a silent witness, its beauty now a maddening obstacle. Lucas Reed hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, his flannel shirt rumpled from 2 days of wear. He stood by Emily's Subaru, gripping a thermos of coffee that had long gone cold. His phone buzzed with messages from friends and family, but he ignored them, his gaze fixed on the trail where Emily had vanished. The discovery of her shoelace and earring had lit a spark of hope, but the spark was fading. The Smokies were vast, 211,000 acres of rugged terrain, with cliffs, ravines, and streams that could hide a person forever. Lucas's mind churned with images of Emily, injured, lost, or worse. He pushed the thoughts away, clinging to her strength, her knowledge of these trails. Ranger Karen Holt led the search effort, her clipboard a constant companion. At 42, she'd seen her share of missing hiker cases, but Emily's disappearance felt different. The unlocked car, the missing pack, the scattered clues. It didn't add up to a simple misstep. Holt's team had grown to over 100, park rangers, local police, search and rescue volunteers, and a K-9 unit from Knoxville. They used topographic maps spread across folding tables, red lines marking the grid they'd searched. Drones whirred above, their cameras scanning the canopy for any sign of teal fabric or human movement. The dogs, trained to catch human scent, worked the trail in pairs, their handlers shouting encouragement. By noon on the second day, the search had covered 5 miles of the Alum Cave Trail and its spurs. The terrain was brutal, steep inclines, slick rocks, and dense underbrush that snagged clothing and slowed progress. Volunteers called Emily's name, their voices hoarse, echoing unanswered through the trees. Holt knelt by a streambed near where the earring was found, her gloved hands sifting through the mud. "She was here," she muttered to Mike Delgado, her partner. "But the trail's cold. The dogs aren't picking up anything past this point." Delgado, barely 30 and new to the Park Service, frowned. "Could she have fallen? There's a drop-off half a mile up." Holt shook her head. "No scuff marks, no broken branches. And her pack's gone. If she fell, we'd have found it." Delgado nodded, but his eyes betrayed his doubt. The Smokies had a way of swallowing evidence and people. The community rallied around the search. Gatlinburg locals brought water, snacks, and blankets, their faces etched with worry. Emily was one of their own, a nurse who'd patched up their kids at the hospital, always with a smile. A diner owner set up a food station at the trailhead, handing out sandwiches to volunteers. A church group held a vigil, their candles flickering against the dusk. Emily's parents, Diane and Tom, worked tirelessly, distributing flyers with Emily's photo, her freckled face, green eyes, and auburn ponytail. "She's 5 feet 6 inches, 130 pounds, Diane told anyone who'd listen, her voice breaking. She was wearing a teal tank top, black shorts, gray hydration vest. "Please, if you saw anything." A lead surfaced on day 3, raising pulses. A hiker, a middle-aged man with a graying beard, reported seeing a woman matching Emily's description near Arch Rock the morning she vanished. "She was running," he told Holt, his hands fidgeting with his backpack straps. "Looked focused, like she knew the trail. But I saw a guy too, maybe a quarter mile back. Scruffy, wearing a dark jacket. He was walking fast, kept looking around." Holt pressed for details, but the hiker's memory was vague, medium build, maybe 30s, no clear face. He'd seen the man head toward a spur trail, one of the unmarked paths that branched off into the wilderness. The team pivoted to the spur, a narrow track barely visible under overgrown laurel. The K-9S swept the area, but the scent trail died again, confounded by the damp earth and shifting winds. Searchers found a crushed soda can, its label faded, but nothing tied it to Emily. Holt marked the spur on her map, her jaw tight. "It's something," she told Lucas, who hovered nearby, his face pale. "We'll keep pushing." But the lead fizzled by nightfall, the spur trail yielding no further clues. The hiker's description of the man was too generic to act on, and no one else reported seeing him. Lucas's hope frayed with each passing hour. He sat with Diane and Tom at the command tent, their silence heavy. Diane clutched the photo of Emily and Lucas at Klingman's dome, her fingers tracing the edges. She was so happy here, she whispered. Lucas nodded, unable to speak. He remembered their last hike together, Emily pointing out a deer trail, her voice bright with excitement. Now, the forest felt like a thief, stealing her from him. The search stretched into day 5. The helicopters widened their circles, their thermal cameras picking up deer and bears, but no human heat signatures. Volunteers stumbled through briars, their arms scratched and faces grim. The media descended, their cameras flashing as reporters interviewed Holt and Lucas. "We're doing everything we can," Holt told them. Her voice clipped. "The terrain's tough, but we're not stopping." Lucas avoided the cameras, his anger simmering. The reporters' questions felt invasive, their headlines: "Local nurse vanishes in Smokies," reducing Emily to a story. A second lead emerged on day 6, a flicker of promise. A volunteer found a scrap of gray fabric caught on a jagged rock near a cliff edge, 2 miles from Arch Rock. It matched the material of Emily's hydration vest, down to the stitching. The team swarmed the area, their shouts urgent. Lucas's heart leapt, but Holt's face was guarded. "It's hers," she confirmed, holding the fabric in a gloved hand. "But it's just a scrap. Could have torn off in a fall, or—" She didn't finish, but Lucas knew the unspoken possibilities. Someone took her, or she was gone. The cliff edge was a dead end. No footprints, no blood, no sign of a struggle. The dogs circled, confused, their handlers muttering about the wind scattering scents. Lucas stood at the cliff, staring into the ravine below, its depths cloaked in shadow. "She didn't fall," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "She's too careful." Holt touched his shoulder, her voice soft. "We'll keep looking, Lucas. I promise." By day 10, the search was losing steam. Volunteers dwindled, called back to jobs and families. The helicopters grounded, their fuel budgets exhausted. Holt's team narrowed their focus to a 10-mile radius, but the forest was relentless, its secrets buried under centuries of growth. Lucas overheard a ranger mutter, "It's like she vanished into thin air." The words cut deep, fueling his desperation. He started hiking the trail himself, ignoring Holt's warnings about safety. He called Emily's name until his voice gave out, his flashlight sweeping the darkness. Emily's family kept the momentum alive. Diane organized a social media campaign, #FindEmilyHarper, sharing photos and pleas for information. Tips flooded in, sightings in nearby towns, theories about bear attacks or kidnappings, but none panned out. Online forums buzzed with speculation, some blaming the park's cursed history, others pointing to human traffickers. Lucas ignored the noise, his focus on the trail. He memorized every bend, every rock, as if he could will Emily back. On day 14, Holt called a meeting at the command tent. Her face was drawn, her clipboard heavy with notes. "We've covered every accessible trail and spur," she said, addressing the team and Emily's family. "We're not giving up, but we're shifting to a targeted approach. Drones, dogs, and smaller teams." Lucas's stomach dropped. He knew what it meant. The active search was scaling back. Diane sobbed, Tom's arm around her, while Lucas stared at the ground, his fists clenched. As the meeting ended, a local approached Holt, an older woman with a weathered face. "I saw a truck that morning," she said quietly. "Red, beat up, parked at the trailhead around 6. It was gone by noon." Holt's eyes sharpened. "Did you see the driver?" The woman shook her head. "Just the truck. Thought it was odd, parked all crooked." Holt jotted it down, but Lucas saw the doubt in her eyes. The truck matched the hiker's vague description, but without a license plate or driver. It was another ghost. The search continued, but the forest held its secrets. The shoelace, the earring, the fabric scrap, they were fragments of Emily, but not enough. Lucas stood at the trailhead each night, the stars above indifferent, the mountains silent. The hope that had burned so fiercely was dimming, replaced by a gnawing dread. Somewhere in the Smokies, Emily was out there, or she wasn't. And the truth, whatever it was, felt further away with every passing day. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park returned to its quiet rhythms by the fall of 2022, the frenzy of Emily Harper's disappearance fading like the summer heat. The Alum Cave trailhead, once a hub of search activity, stood empty, its gravel lot reclaimed by hikers and tourists. The forest, with its mist-wreathed peaks and whispering pines, seemed to erase the chaos, as if Emily's absence was just another secret it had swallowed. For Lucas Reed and Emily's family, though, the silence was deafening. The search had dwindled to a skeletal crew of rangers checking tips, and the case was officially classified as cold by November. The weight of that word, cold, settled over Lucas like frost, chilling the hope he clung to. Lucas moved through his days in a fog, his carpentry work suffering as he spent hours staring at trail maps or driving to the park, retracing Emily's steps. His apartment, once filled with her laughter and the smell of her lavender lotion, felt like a museum of their life together. Her running shoes sat by the door untouched, and the photo from Klingman's dome hung on the fridge, its edges curling. Lucas couldn't bring himself to take it down. He called Ranger Karen Holt weakly, his voice tight with desperation. "Anything new?" he'd ask, and Holt's answers were always the same. "We're still looking, Lucas. We haven't forgotten her." Emily's parents, Diane and Tom, refused to let her fade. They kept the hashtag #FindEmilyHarper campaign alive, posting daily on social media with her photo and pleas for information. The posts drew thousands of shares, but the tips had dried up. Most were dead ends, like a woman in Asheville who looked like Emily but wasn't, or a backpack found in another park unrelated. Diane organized vigils in Gatlinburg, where locals gathered with candles, their prayers drifting into the night. At one vigil, a young girl gave Diane a drawing of Emily, her auburn hair and green eyes rendered in crayon. Diane clutched it, tears streaming, and whispered, "She's still out there." The online world took on a life of its own. True crime forums buzzed with theories about Emily's fate. Some speculated she'd been taken by a predator, citing the park's history of unsolved cases. Others pointed to the terrain, suggesting she'd fallen into a ravine or been swept away by a flash flood. A few fringe voices claimed supernatural causes, weaving tales of Smoky Mountain spirits. Lucas lurked on these forums, his jaw clenched, hating the way strangers dissected Emily's life. One post stuck with him. A user named Trail Watcher claimed to have seen a red pickup truck near the trailhead days after Emily vanished, idling at dusk. Lucas forwarded it to Holt, but she replied wearily, "No plate, no description. We've got nothing solid." Holt herself felt the case like a splinter under her skin. She'd worked missing persons cases before, but Emily's lingered. The shoelace, the earring, the scrap of fabric. They were puzzle pieces that didn't fit. She kept a file on her desk, stuffed with maps, witness statements, and photos of the evidence. At night, she'd pore over it, her coffee going cold, wondering if she'd missed something. Her partner, Mike Delgado, tried to stay optimistic, but even he admitted the odds were grim. "The Smokies don't give up their secrets easy," he said one evening, tossing a topographic map aside. Holt nodded, her eyes on the photo of Emily's smiling face. By the spring of 2023, the case had faded from the headlines. Gatlinburg moved on, its streets filled with tourists chasing waterfalls and black bear sightings. Lucas, though, was stuck. He quit his job, unable to focus, and took up odd jobs to pay the rent. He spent weekends hiking the Alum Cave Trail, calling Emily's name until his throat burned. He knew it was futile, but stopping felt like betrayal. Diane and Tom joined him sometimes, their faces etched with grief. They'd walk in silence, pausing at Arch Rock or the streambed where the earring was found, as if the forest might whisper a clue. In the summer of 2024, a flicker of hope emerged. Another hiker went missing in the Smokies, a man in his 40s named Daniel Carter, last seen on the Chimney Tops Trail, 20 miles from Alum Cave. The similarities were eerie. A car left at the trailhead, a hydration pack gone, no clear signs of a fall. The media latched onto it, reviving Emily's story with headlines like "Second Smokies Vanishing Raises Questions." Holt's team was pulled in, their resources stretched thin. Searchers scoured the Chimney Tops area, finding a single glove that matched Carter's, but nothing else. The case brought new eyes to Emily's file, and a tip came in. A camper reported seeing a man in a dark jacket near Chimney Tops the day Carter vanished, carrying a heavy duffel bag. Lucas seized on the tip. His hope reignited. He drove to Holt's office, his hands shaking as he demanded action. "It's the same guy from Emily's case," he insisted, citing the hiker's description from 2 years ago. Holt was cautious. "It's thin, Lucas. Dark jackets are common, and duffel bags don't prove anything." But she followed up, interviewing the camper and cross-referencing the description with their sparse leads on Emily. The camper's details were vague: medium height, scruffy beard, late 30s, and the trail cameras near chimney tops showed nothing unusual. The lead fizzled, and Carter's case went cold by fall, leaving Lucas deflated. The years blurred. By 2025, 3 years after Emily's disappearance, the case was a ghost. The hashtag #FindEmilyHarper campaign still had followers, but posts were less frequent, shared mostly by Diane and a few loyal locals. Gatlinburg's community had shifted, new faces replacing those who'd searched in 2022. Lucas moved into a smaller apartment, unable to afford the old one, but he kept Emily's things: her running shoes, her trail maps, the Klingman's dome photo. He'd aged a decade in 3 years, his face lined, his eyes hollow. Diane and Tom visited often, their conversations heavy with unspoken questions. Had Emily fallen? Been taken? Was she still alive, somewhere, somehow? Holt, too, carried the weight. She'd been promoted to lead ranger, but Emily's file never left her desk. She'd walk the Alum Cave Trail on her days off, her eyes scanning the underbrush, half expecting to spot a teal shoelace or a glint of silver. Delgado had moved to another park, but he called occasionally, asking, "Any word on Harper?" Holt's answer was always the same: "Not yet." She'd started to doubt they'd ever find answers. The Smokies were too vast, too secretive. People vanished here: hikers, campers, kids, and some were never found. The community hadn't forgotten Emily entirely. A small memorial stood at the trailhead, a wooden plaque with her name and a carved leaf, matching her earring. Hikers left flowers, their petals fading in the sun. The hospital where Emily worked named a scholarship in her honor for aspiring nurses who loved the outdoors. Lucas attended the ceremony, his throat tight as Diane spoke about Emily's kindness, her love for the mountains. "She's still with us," Diane said, her voice breaking. Lucas wanted to believe it, but the forest felt emptier each day. Online, the true crime forums kept Emily's name alive, though the theories grew wilder. Some claimed she'd run off to start a new life, a notion Lucas found laughable. Others pointed to a serial predator, linking her case to Carter's and older Smokies' disappearances. One post mentioned a local maintenance worker, a quiet man who'd worked park trails for years, always seen with a red pickup. Lucas read it late one night, his heart pounding, but the post lacked details, no name, no proof. He sent it to Holt, who sighed over the phone. "We've checked every red truck in the county, Lucas. Nothing sticks." As July 2025 approached, the 3rd anniversary of Emily's disappearance loomed. Diane planned a memorial hike, inviting the community to walk the Alum Cave Trail in her honor. Lucas agreed to join, though the thought of it twisted his gut. The forest, once his and Emily's refuge, was now a place of loss, its beauty a cruel mask. He stood at the trailhead the night before, the memorial plaque glinting under his flashlight. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and earth, the same as it had been 3 years ago. He whispered her name, his voice lost in the wind. The Smokies held their silence, and Lucas felt the weight of a truth that might never come. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park was cloaked in the golden haze of late September 2025, its trails alive with the crunch of fallen leaves and the sharp scent of autumn. 3 years had passed since Emily Harper vanished on the Alum Cave Trail, and the forest had settled back into its timeless rhythm, indifferent to the grief it harbored. Lucas Reed still walked the trails, his steps slower now, his eyes scanning the underbrush with a fading hope. The hashtag #FindEmilyHarper campaign had dwindled to a flicker, sustained by Diane's stubborn posts and a handful of loyal followers. Ranger Karen Holt kept Emily's file on her desk, but new cases demanded her attention. The case was cold, a ghost in the Smokies, until a chance discovery shattered the silence. On a crisp Saturday morning, Clara Monroe, a 62-year-old retiree, hiked a remote spur off the Alum Cave Trail with her border collie, Rusty. Clara, a former librarian who'd moved to Gatlinburg for its quiet beauty, was no stranger to the park. She preferred the less-traveled paths, where she could sketch wildflowers or read in solitude. Rusty, with his black and white coat and boundless energy, darted ahead, his nose low to the ground. The spur trail, barely a footpath, wound through dense laurel and rocky outcrops, its solitude a stark contrast to the bustling main trails. Clara followed Rusty, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, unaware that this hike would change everything. Rusty stopped abruptly near a shallow ravine, his ears pricked, a low whine escaping his throat. Clara called him back, but he ignored her, pawing at the earth beneath a cluster of ferns. The soil was soft, disturbed, unlike the packed ground nearby. Clara approached, her heart quickening as Rusty unearthed a tattered gray fabric, its edges frayed but unmistakable, a piece of a hydration vest, identical to the one Emily Harper had worn. Clinging to the fabric was a small, leather-bound journal, its pages warped by moisture but intact. Clara knelt, her hands trembling as she brushed dirt from the cover. Inside, in neat, familiar handwriting, was a name, Emily Harper. Clara's breath caught. She'd followed Emily's case, attended the vigils, seen the flyers with Emily's freckled face. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers clumsy as she dialed 911. "I found something," she told the dispatcher, her voice shaking. "It's Emily Harper's, on a spur trail off Alum Cave. You need to come now." Rusty sat beside her, his whine echoing in the still air, as if he sensed the weight of the moment. Clara stayed put, guarding the find, her eyes fixed on the journal. Its pages were filled with trail notes, dates, and sketches of the Smokies, Emily's love for the land preserved in ink. Within hours, the trailhead was alive again, a grim echo of 2022. Ranger Karen Holt arrived first, her face taut as she surveyed the scene. A forensic team followed, their white suits stark against the autumn foliage. They cordoned off the ravine, their tools clinking as they photographed the site. The journal and fabric were bagged carefully, but the real shock came when a technician uncovered a second item, a small, silver charm shaped like a leaf, matching the earring found 3 years ago. Holt's pulse quickened. "It's hers," she said to Mike Delgado, who'd driven back from his new post in Asheville to assist. "This isn't a coincidence." Lucas was at the trailhead within an hour, summoned by Holt's call. His face was ashen, his hands shoved deep in his pockets as he watched the team work. Diane and Tom arrived soon after, their eyes red but burning with a fragile hope. "What does it mean?" Lucas asked Holt, his voice low. She hesitated, choosing her words. "It's a lead, Lucas. A big one. We're sending everything to the lab. DNA, fingerprints, the works." Lucas nodded, but his gaze drifted to the ravine, where Rusty still lingered, his tail low. The forest, once a thief, had given something back, but what? The forensic team worked through the day, their floodlights casting long shadows as dusk fell. The journal was a treasure trove. Emily's notes detailed her runs, her favorite trails, even a sketch of Arch Rock. But one page stood out, a hurried entry dated the morning she vanished. "Saw a red truck at the lot, parked weird. Guy watching from the woods. Felt off." Holt's stomach twisted as she read it, the words a chilling echo of the vague witness reports from 2022. The fabric and charm were sent to a lab in Knoxville, where technicians began DNA analysis, cross-referencing with databases for missing persons and criminal records. The discovery electrified Gatlinburg. News vans returned, their cameras trained on the trailhead as reporters recounted Emily's story. The hashtag #FindEmilyHarper hashtag surged, with thousands sharing Clara's story. Retiree's dog uncovers clue in missing nurse case. Clara, overwhelmed, stayed home. Rusty curled at her feet. She told Holt she'd never seen the journal or charm before, that Rusty had simply followed his nose. "He's always digging," she said, her voice soft. "I didn't expect this." Holt thanked her, but her mind was on the evidence, on the red truck Emily had noted. At the ranger station, Holt and Delgado pored over the case file, the journal opened between them. The red truck was a recurring thread, mentioned by the hiker in 2022, the local woman, and now Emily herself. Holt pulled vehicle records for Gatlinburg and the surrounding counties, focusing on red pickups registered to locals. The list was long, but she cross-referenced it with park employees and contractors, men who'd have access to the trails. One name stood out: Nathan Cobb, a 38-year-old maintenance worker who'd serviced park trails for a decade. His record showed a red 1998 Ford F-150, and he lived alone in a cabin near Newfound Gap Road. Holt's gut tightened. Cobb was quiet, unassuming, the kind of man who blended into the background. Too quiet, maybe. Lucas, Diane, and Tom gathered at the station that evening, their faces a mix of dread and anticipation. Holt shared what she could without compromising the investigation. "The journal's a game changer," she said. "We're running DNA, checking every angle. This isn't over." Lucas stared at the bagged journal, visible through the evidence room's glass door. "She was scared," he said, his voice breaking. That last note, she knew something was wrong. Diane clutched Tom's hand, her tears silent. The charm, the journal, the fabric, they were pieces of Emily, but they raised more questions than answers. Was she out there still? Or was this all that remained? The lab results came back 2 days later, a Friday that Holt would never forget. The fabric held traces of Emily's DNA, sweat, skin cells, confirming it was hers. But there was another profile, faint but present. Male unknown, not in the national database. The journal's pages were clean of prints except Emily's, but the leather cover had a partial thumbprint, also male, also unknown. Holt called in a favor with a forensic specialist, pushing for a rush analysis. The charm yielded nothing, no DNA, no prints, but its presence in the ravine, so far from the earring, suggested it hadn't fallen by accident. Holt and Delgado drove to Cobb's cabin that evening, their unmarked SUV parked a quarter-mile away to avoid notice. The cabin was modest, tucked in a clearing off a dirt road, its porch sagging under stacks of firewood. Cobb's red truck sat in the driveway, its paint chipped but matching Emily's description. Through the window, they saw Cobb, a lean man with a scruffy beard, moving slowly as he cooked dinner. He looked ordinary, forgettable, but Holt's instincts screamed. "We need more," she told Delgado. "A warrant, surveillance, something." Delgado nodded, his jaw tight. "He's hiding something. I can feel it." The breakthrough had cracked the case open, but the truth was still out of reach. Lucas sat at home that night, the Klingman's dome photo in his hands, his eyes tracing Emily's smile. The journal's words haunted him, guy watching from the woods. Felt off. He didn't know Cobb, didn't know if the truck was the key, but for the first time in 3 years, he felt a spark of something beyond despair. The forest had given up a secret, thanks to a dog and a retiree who'd wandered off the beaten path. But what else was hiding? And would it be enough to bring Emily home? The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, with its rolling mists and shadow trails, seemed to hold its breath as October 2025 unfolded. The discovery of Emily Harper's journal, hydration vest fragment, and silverleaf charm had reignited a case that had languished for 3 years. Ranger Karen Holt felt the weight of it, her desk now a war room of evidence bags, maps, and forensic reports. The partial thumbprint and unknown male DNA found at the scene were threads she couldn't let slip. For Lucas Reed and Emily's parents, Diane and Tom, the breakthrough was a lifeline, pulling them from despair into a tense, fragile hope. The forest had spoken, but its message was incomplete, and the truth about Emily's fate remained shrouded. Holt's focus zeroed in on Nathan Cobb, the maintenance worker whose red pickup truck matched the description in Emily's journal and earlier witness reports. At 38, Cobb was a fixture in Gatlinburg, quiet, solitary, the kind of man who nodded politely but kept to himself. He'd worked park trails for years, clearing debris, repairing signs, blending into the background like the trees he tended. His cabin, a mile from the Alum Cave trailhead, was unassuming, but the chipped red Ford F-150 in his driveway was a glaring match. Holt didn't have enough for a warrant, but she had enough to watch him. The investigation shifted into high gear. Holt coordinated with the Gatlinburg Police Department and the FBI, pulling in a small surveillance team. They set up discreetly, using unmarked vehicles and trail cameras to monitor Cobb's movements. His routine was mundane, Early mornings at the park, evenings at his cabin, occasional trips to a hardware store or diner. But Holt noticed patterns that set her nerves on edge. Cobb often lingered near trailheads, his truck idling as he watched hikers. He carried a heavy duffel bag, its contents unknown, and his hikes took him to remote spurs, far from the main paths. "He's too comfortable out there," Holt told Mike Delgado, who'd returned to assist. "Like he knows every inch of those woods." The forensic lab in Knoxville worked overtime. The male DNA from the hydration vest fragment was a partial match to a cold case in North Carolina, a 2020 assault near the Appalachian Trail, unsolved but linked to a similar profile. The thumbprint on the journal's cover was too degraded for a definitive ID, but it ruled out Cobb's co-workers and park volunteers. Holt pushed for a DNA sample from Cobb, but without probable cause. Her hands were tied. Instead, she dug into his past. Cobb had no criminal record, but a former co-worker mentioned he'd been off after a breakup years ago, retreating into himself. A neighbor recalled him burning something in his backyard in 2022. The summer Emily vanished, the smoke thick and acrid. Lucas, desperate for answers, haunted the ranger station. Holt kept him at arm's length, wary of compromising the investigation, but his pain was palpable. "It's him, isn't it?" Lucas asked one evening, his voice raw. "The guy with the truck." Holt's face was a mask. "We're following every lead, Lucas. You need to let us work." But Lucas couldn't sit still. He drove past Cobb's cabin one night, slowing to note the truck's license plate, his heart pounding. He didn't tell Holt, knowing she'd warn him off, but the sight of the cabin, its windows dark, its solitude eerie, confirmed his gut feeling. Cobb was hiding something. On October 15th, the surveillance team caught a break. A trail camera near a remote spur captured Cobb at dusk, kneeling by a stream, washing something in the water. The footage was grainy, but the object looked like a piece of clothing, its color indistinct. Holt's pulse raced as she reviewed the tape with Delgado. "We need that stream searched," she said. The next day, a forensic team scoured the area, finding nothing but a faint trace of bleach in the soil, a chemical Cobb had no reason to use on park maintenance. It wasn't enough for an arrest, but it tightened the net. The real turning point came a week later. A diner waitress, tipped off by the renewed media coverage, called Holt with a tip. She'd served Cobb the morning Emily vanished, July 17th, 2022. He was jumpy, she said. Kept checking his watch, paid in cash, left fast. Had a big duffel bag with him, looked heavy. The waitress hadn't thought much of it then, but now, with Emily's journal mentioning the red truck, it clicked. Holt cross-referenced Cobb's work schedule. He'd taken a personal day that morning, claiming a family emergency, though he had no family in the area. Holt secured a warrant on October 22nd, her evidence thin but bolstered by the journal, the DNA, and the waitress's statement. At dawn, a joint team of rangers, police, and FBI agents descended on Cobb's cabin. Lucas, Diane, and Tom waited at the ranger station, their nerves frayed. Holt led the raid, her heart pounding as she knocked on the door. Cobb answered, bleary-eyed, his beard unkempt. "What's this about?" he asked, his voice calm but his eyes darting. Holt handed him the warrant, her tone firm. "We're searching your property, Nathan. Step aside." The cabin was sparse, its walls bare except for a few faded park maps. The team moved methodically, bagging tools, clothes, and a locked metal box found under the floorboards. In the truck's bed, they found traces of soil matching the ravine where Clara and Rusty uncovered Emily's journal. The duffel bag, tucked in a closet, held a chilling find. A collection of photos, some of hikers on trails, others of women in Gatlinburg, unaware they were being watched. One photo showed Emily, running on the Alum Cave Trail, her teal tank top vivid against the green. Lucas, shown the photo later, nearly collapsed, his voice a whisper. "That's her." He was watching her. Cobb was taken into custody for questioning, his demeanor eerily composed. In the interrogation room, a stark space at the Gatlinburg police station, he sat across from Holt and an FBI agent, his hands folded. "I don't know anything about that girl," he said, his voice flat, but his eyes flickered when shown the photo of Emily. Holt leaned in, her voice steady. We have your truck at the trailhead, Nathan. We have DNA, a witness, and photos you shouldn't have. Talk to us. Cobb's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his silence a wall. The metal box yielded the most damning evidence, a second silver leaf charm, identical to Emily's earring and the one found in the ravine. It was wrapped in a scrap of teal fabric, stained with what tests later confirmed was blood, Emily's blood. Holt's stomach churned as she read the lab report, her hands shaking. The evidence pointed to Cobb, but key questions lingered. Where was Emily? Was she alive? And if not, where were her remains? Cobb's silence infuriated Holt, but she knew a confession was their best hope for answers. Lucas, Diane, and Tom were briefed that evening, their faces a mix of relief and horror. He did it, Lucas said, his voice breaking. He took her. Diane clutched the Klingman's dome photo, her tears falling. Where is she, Karen? Where's my girl? Holt had no answer, her own frustration boiling. The raid had confirmed Cobb as their suspect, but without a body or a confession, the case was incomplete. The forest still held its secrets, and Cobb's calm demeanor suggested he knew it. That night, Holt sat at her desk, the evidence photos spread before her. The journal, the charms, the bloodstained fabric, they told a story of violence, of a predator hiding in plain sight. Cobb's photos suggested he'd watched others, too, raising the specter of more victims. Holt called Delgado, her voice low. He's not talking, but he's our guy. We need to break him. Delgado agreed, suggesting they lean on the other photos, hint at a serial pattern to rattle him. The plan was set for the next interrogation, but Holt couldn't shake the dread. What had Cobb done to Emily? And what else was he hiding in the vast, silent Smokies? The Great Smoky Mountains National Park stood silent under a November 2025 sky, its peaks wreathed in fog as the investigation into Emily Harper's disappearance reached its climax. Nathan Cobb, the quiet maintenance worker whose red pickup truck had haunted the case, sat in custody, his calm facade a chilling contrast to the evidence mounting against him. Ranger Karen Holt, fueled by 3 years of frustration, prepared for a final push to break him. Lucas Reed and Emily's parents, Diane and Tom, waited in anguish. The discovery of Emily's journal, bloodstained fabric, and silver charms offering a grim hope for closure. The forest, both beautiful and cruel, held the final pieces of the truth. Holt and FBI agent Laura Chin planned the interrogation meticulously. The metal box from Cobb's cabin, containing the bloodstained teal fabric, a second leaf charm, and photos of Emily and other hikers, suggested a predator with a pattern. The partial DNA from the hydration vest linked to a 2020 assault case in North Carolina, hinting at a broader trail of victims. Holt spread the evidence photos across the interrogation room table, her eyes locked on Cobb as he sat, hands cuffed, his gaze distant. "We know you watched her, Nathan," Holt said, her voice steady but sharp. "The photos, the blood, the charm. It's over. Tell us where Emily is." Cobb's lips twitched, a flicker of something, amusement, defiance, crossing his face. "You're fishing," he said, his voice low, almost bored. But when Chin slid a photo of the journal across the table, Emily's handwriting stark against the warped pages, his fingers tightened. "She wrote about you," Chin said. "The truck, the way you watched her. She knew you were trouble." Cobb's eyes darted to the journal, then away, his jaw clenching. Holt leaned in, her voice softer now, probing. "You didn't mean for it to go this far, did you? Talk to us, Nathan. Give her family peace." The interrogation stretched for hours, Cobb's silence punctuated by cryptic deflections. "I like the trails," he said at one point, his tone casual. "Lots of people do. But the photos, dozens of women, some unaware, some clearly stalked, told a different story." Holt pressed harder, mentioning the North Carolina case, the bleach in the stream, the duffel bag. Cobb's composure cracked when she brought up the other hikers in the photos. "Who are they, Nathan?" she asked. "More like Emily?" His eyes flickered with something dark, guilt, or fear of being caught. Finally, after 6 hours, Cobb spoke, his voice detached, as if recounting a dream. "She was fast," he said, staring at the table. "Always running, always alone. I just wanted to know her." Holt's stomach churned as he described following Emily on July 17, 2022, watching her from the woods near Arch Rock. He'd parked his truck at the trailhead, waiting for her to pass. "She saw me," he said, a faint smile curling his lips. "Looked right at me. I didn't plan it." His words grew halting, but the story emerged. He'd followed her to a spur trail, where she'd tripped, dropping her pack. He'd grabbed her, panicked when she fought, and things got out of hand. Cobb's confession was chillingly clinical. He'd killed Emily in a struggle, he said, his hands tightening around her throat when she screamed. He'd buried her body in a shallow grave off a remote spur, wrapping her pack and journal in plastic to hide them. The charms, he admitted, were keepsakes, taken from her and others. Mementos, he called them. Holt fought to keep her voice steady as she asked, "Where is she, Nathan? Take us to her." Cobb hesitated, then nodded, his eyes empty. "You'll need dogs," he said. "It's deep in." The next morning, November 3rd, Holt led a team to the coordinates Cobb provided, a rugged spur 3 miles from the Alum Cave trailhead. Lucas, Diane, and Tom were kept at the ranger station, their nerves frayed as they waited. The forest was dense, its floor a tangle of roots and rocks, the air heavy with the scent of damp leaves. K9 units led the way, the noses low, until a German shepherd named Max alerted at a clearing. The team dug carefully, their shovels biting into the earth. At 2 feet down, they found her, Emily's remains, wrapped in a tarp, her teal tank top faded but unmistakable. A forensic tech confirmed it with a nod to Holt, who closed her eyes, the weight of 3 years lifting and breaking her heart at once. The recovery was somber, the team working in silence as they cataloged the scene. Emily's remains were intact enough for DNA confirmation, though the lab would later verify it was her. A second charm, matching the one from the ravine, was found in the tarp, its silver glinting in the sunlight. Holt stood back, her hands trembling as she called Lucas. "We found her," she said, her voice thick. "I'm so sorry." Lucas's sob on the other end was a sound she'd never forget. At the ranger station, Lucas, Diane, and Tom clung to each other, their grief raw but laced with relief. Emily was no longer lost to the forest's vastness. Diane clutched the Klingman's dome photo, her fingers tracing Emily's smile. "She's home," she whispered, though the words felt hollow. Lucas couldn't speak, his mind replaying Cobb's confession, the image of Emily fighting alone. Tom, his face etched with pain, asked Holt, "Is he talking? Will he pay?" Holt nodded. "He's confessed to Emily. We're looking into others. He's not walking away." Cobb's confession unraveled a darker truth. He admitted to 2 other killings, hikers in North Carolina and Virginia, their cases cold until now. The photos in his cabin linked him to at least 5 more women, though no bodies had been found. The FBI took over, building a case for a serial predator who'd used the Smokies and other parks as his hunting ground. Cobb's motive, if it could be called that, was a twisted obsession with solitude and control, a need to keep pieces of the women he watched. The charms, he said, were his way of holding on to them. Gatlinburg reeled as the news broke. The community, already scarred by Emily's loss, grappled with the revelation that a local had betrayed their trust. The hospital where Emily worked held a memorial, its halls filled with flowers and photos of her. The Alum Cave trailhead saw new safety measures, more cameras, ranger patrols, and signs warning hikers to stay on main paths. The wooden plaque with Emily's name, carved with a leaf, became a pilgrimage site, adorned with fresh flowers and notes. Clara Monroe, whose dog Rusty had sparked the breakthrough, visited quietly, leaving a sketch of the Smokies for Emily. "Rusty knew," she told a reporter, her voice soft. "He just knew." On a cold November evening, Lucas, Diane, and Tom gathered at the trailhead for a private memorial. The forest was still, its pines whispering in the wind. They stood by the plaque, Diane holding a new photo of Emily, taken on her last birthday, her green eyes bright. Lucas spoke first, his voice steady despite the tears. "You love this place, Em. It was yours. We'll keep it yours." They scattered wildflower seeds, a nod to Emily's love for the Smokies blooms, and watched the sunset paint the mountains gold. Holt watched from a distance, her job done but her heart heavy. The case had been solved by chance, a dog's instinct, a retiree's hike, but the cost was staggering. Emily's life, and others, had been stolen by a man who'd hidden in plain sight. Holt vowed to keep digging, to find the other women in Cobb's photos, to give their families closure. As she walked back to her truck, the forest loomed around her, its beauty both a comfort and a warning. The Smokies had given up one secret, but they held others, and Holt knew she'd never see them the same way again. Lucas stood alone after the memorial, the others gone. He touched the plaque, his fingers tracing the carved leaf. The forest was quiet, its vastness no longer a threat but a keeper of memories. Emily was gone, but she was here, too. In the trail she'd loved, the photo on his fridge, the seeds they'd scattered. He whispered her name, not expecting an answer, but feeling her all the same. The Smokies, for all their cruelty, had brought her back to him, and in that bittersweet truth, he found a fragile peace.